Magandang gabi sa ating lahat. Welcome to our 365 Daily Devotion Bible Characters Edition. So ngayon ay patuloy natin pag-aaralan ng ating series at ang paksa natin ngayong gabi ay patungkol kay Joseph at ang kanyang mga kapatid or mga kapatid na lalaki. So sabi dito Joseph's brothers committed a grave sin against him, di ba? They betrayed their own blood, sold him into slavery, lied to their father, and allowed years of suffering to unfold. So Joseph did not deserve what happened to him. Yet many years later, the same brothers who once held power over him stood helpless before him as strangers in a foreign land. Diba? Joseph now had authority, wealth, and legal power to punish them for everything they had done. So instead of revenge, Joseph chose forgiveness. He did not minimize their sin, excuse their actions, or pretend the pain never existed. So Joseph plainly said, "You intended to harm me," but he did not stop. There he also declared a greater truth. God was sovereign over the entire story. So Joseph believed that God ruled even over betrayal, injustice, and suffering. So his forgiveness flowed from faith in God's control, not from emotional denial. So this account teaches us that when we trust God's sovereignty, forgiveness becomes possible even when wounds are deep. So scripture says that in Genesis chapter 45 verses 5 to 8, "Thou therefore be not grieved nor angry with yourselves that ye sold me hither from for God did send me before you to be preserved life. For these 2 years hath the famine been in the land, and yet there are 5 years in the which there shall be neither be eating nor harvest, and God sent me before you to preserve you a posterity in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you that sent me, either but God, and he had made me a father to Pharaoh and Lord of all this house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt." So sabi dito sa katuruan natin, una, true forgiveness is rooted in God's sovereignty. So Joseph was able to forgive because he saw his story through God's lens, not merely through human injustice. He understood that God was actively working even when people were shining against him or sinning against him. So this belief did not erase the wrong, but it placed the wrong under God's authority. So when God is seen as sovereign, suffering is no longer meaningless. So many believers struggle to forgive because they see pain as a random or unfair without purpose. So Joseph teaches us that God can use even evil intentions to accomplish holy purposes. So forgiveness becomes possible when we believe that God never loses control of our story, even in its darkest chapters. So true forgiveness releases others from guilt. Joseph did not hold his brothers hostage to their past, instead of constantly redeeming or reminding them of their failure. So he lifted the burden of guilt from their shoulders. So he spoke words of reassurance and peace, reminding them that God had already redeemed the situation. So this reflects a heart that understands grace. So forgiveness does not mean pretending sin never happened. It means choosing not to weaponize it. So when we forgive, we stop demanding emotional repayment from those who hurt us. So Joseph's response shows that forgiveness creates space for restoration rather than fear. Third is true forgiveness sets you free from bitterness. So bitterness chains the wounded person to the offender. Joseph could have lived as a powerful ruler while remaining emotionally imprisoned by anger. Instead, forgiveness liberated him. These tears were not tears of rage, but tears of healing. So when bitterness is released, peace takes its place. Joseph's freedom came from surrendering judgment to God. Scripture consistently teaches that vengeance belongs to the Lord. For forgiveness is not weakness, it's spiritual strength rooted in trust. So, ang application lang natin dito, no, una, interpret your suffering from God's perspective. No? So, like Joseph, believers are called to look beyond the immediate pain that and ask what God may be accomplishing. So, this does not mean labeling suffering as good, but trusting that God is working good through it. No, viewing pain through God's sovereignty prevents despair and resentment. So when suffering is seen only through human eyes, forgiveness feels impossible. But when viewed through faith, suffering becomes a place where God shapes character. No, so prepares destiny and reveals His faithfulness. Second is forgive those who hurt you. So and release them from guilt. So forgiveness is a conscious decision, not merely an emotion. So Joseph chose to speak life instead of accusation. Believers today are called to do the same, no, following Christ's command to forgive as we have been forgiven. Releasing others from guilt does not deny accountability, but it entrusts justice to God. This act reflects the gospel itself, where Christ forgave us while we were still sinners. And lastly, no, release yourself from bitterness and negative emotions. Holding on to anger may feel justified, but it quietly destroys the soul. So Joseph's story shows that forgiveness is also an act of self-liberation. Peace returns when bitterness is surrendered to God. So letting go, it's not forgetting, it's choosing healing over hatred. So when bitterness is released, joy and emotional clarity are restored, making room for God's peace. So our discussion here now is why must we cling to God's sovereignty in order to practice true forgiveness? Because forgiveness requires trust. Without believing that God rules over injustice, forgiveness feels like surrendering to unfairness. Trusting God's sovereignty assures us that no wrong goes unnoticed and no pain is wasted. This confidence empowers us to forgive, knowing that God is both just and good. So let's dive deeper on Joseph, Jesus, and forgiveness. So Joseph's life foreshadows Jesus Christ. Both were betrayed by their own, no, falsely accused and unjustly punished. Yet both responded with forgiveness rather than revenge. Jesus, like Joseph, entrusted judgment to God and chose mercy. So at the cross, Jesus prayed for his enemies, saying, Father, forgive them. Through Joseph's forgiveness points us forward to Christ's greater forgiveness, reminding us that the ability to forgive flows from God's redemptive work in our hearts.